Welcome to our employer video series. My name is Jamie Pittman, and I'm Program Director of Student Development for the Rawls College of Business Career Management Center. And today we're excited to have Julie Mandrell with us. She is a recruiter and HR generalist with PlainsCapital Bank. Hi, Julie.
Hi, how are y'all?
Doing great. We're excited to have you with us today. We're going to be talking about what are some things that students should be focusing on and doing during this time in order to prepare for future interviews and, job searching and that kind of thing.
Good. I'm excited. I'm glad y'all asked me to join. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. We always love your input. So let's go ahead and get started by talking about how COVID and how the last few months, the way things have been, how's that had an impact on your recruiting and hiring?
It's inevitable. I think it creeps in and it's disrupted everyone's personal lives, professional lives. Everyone's been touched by this. And it has changed, the landscape of how we're recruiting and what positions we're looking for, or what departments may be slower, what maybe have picked up, and we need more staff within those departments. So it's really kind of changed a lot. We've been fortunate that we haven't had to slow down too much on positions being filled. We're an essential service, and so we've had, as spots come up and we need to fill them, we've had the opportunity to fill them. So we've been very blessed by that. Really the biggest impact for us personally, and I speak from, our company, has been how we're interviewing candidates or how we're going through the recruiting process itself. It's obviously moved pretty virtual. We're trying to minimize the amount of traffic that's coming in our branches and our office spaces. So we're doing a lot more phone interviewing. We're interviewing virtually and through video conferencing systems. And that seemed to have worked really well. We all joke and kid around, and I tell anyone I'm talking to and I'm recruiting and I'm going through the process, I joke with them and say, it's awkward for all of us and we're just going to all be okay and get through it. It's fine. And we can address that we feel uncomfortable and we're awkward and we don't know how to do this because we're not used to doing this. And we joke and laugh, and I think it relaxes everyone. And so that's been the biggest change. But, the questions we're asking are still the same. The type of candidate we're looking for those roles is still the same. It's just how we're going about talking to you may look a little different right now.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be for some time now that's probably going to look a little bit different. We've been trying to coach our students on trying to make the most of this time. So they've probably been at home a little bit more. They may have had a little bit more time on their hands. So we've been coaching them to try to make the most of that time. And it's probably going to come up in an interview. So when they're talking about, what the last few months have looked like, it's probably going to come up in the interview. And, what do you think that's going to look like for students?
So I think naturally conversation about what you've been doing the past few months or how has COVID impacted you, I think by just natural conversation, that will creep in. I don't have any conversation with anyone I'm around where it doesn't creep in some form or fashion. It's so upfront right now, and it's what we're dealing with. And, are we addressing directly, tell me what you've been doing for the past 2 or 3 months? No, but I think the conversation will naturally work towards, okay, this is why I have a gap in employment here, or this is why I left this past employer, or that, this is how I transitioned from graduation to this point right now. It's going to creep in. And so we're not afraid to address it. And what you can do things to prepare for that conversation, because it is going to creep in and it is going to be something that you talk about with people. And I think you guys are doing a good job telling people, employers, some may directly address it, some may not, but you need to be prepared to have the conversation about it when it does come up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So we want them to, make the most of their time, not just sit around. It's definitely not time to be lazy. It's definitely not a time to sit back and relax, because they may not realize it, but recruiting is going to happen in the fall. So it's going to look different, just kind of how we've already touched on. But there will be career fairs. They'll be virtual. There'll be opportunities for them to connect with employers. Employers are already starting to make those interview schedules. So it's happening. It's going to happen. So let's talk about what are some of the things that students can be doing to prepare for interviews and job searching, some specific things they can do.
You addressed it. Summer's here. We all want to take a break, but, this might not be the ideal time to take a break. And there are things you can do that don't involve you working in a physical office space if you're not comfortable with that right now. I've been telling people, read, reread again your resume. Make sure it looks on point. The job market is going to get competitive. Come the fall, come these graduation cycles, there are going to be fewer jobs to be had and more people wanting those jobs. So make sure your resume looks right. Send it to someone else. You don't have to physically interact with someone to do that. You can send it. You guys are still working. You're still there. You're still encouraging the students to do those things. Have a friend, family member, a mentor, a peer, someone review your resume for you. And look for grammatical mistakes. Make sure that's polished because you have the opportunity to do that right now. You can spruce up your LinkedIn profile and look for meaningful connections via LinkedIn. That's still a good thing. We use LinkedIn as a source to find candidates. And that's still a good opportunity to connect with those of us that are out there still doing these things. And it's an opportune time to make sure that profile looks really good. Additionally, some other things you can consider: volunteering in your organization or in your local community, wherever that may be. If you're back here, I'm in Lubbock. If you're back here in Lubbock, and there's volunteer opportunity to be had, and you feel comfortable and safe doing so, that's something you can add to your resume and a meaningful conversation you can have once you do get into those interview situations. So you're not struggling to fill the gap of what did you do for that 3-month period, and you just draw a blank. Well, no, I volunteered, with my local food bank, or I helped build a website for XYZ firm that couldn't stand up and take virtual clients or whatever. So there's a lot of that going on, and you can volunteer in your local organization or with your local organizations. Keep in touch with us. We're still here. We're working. Some of us work from home. Some of us work for an office, but we're still here. So send emails and ask, what opportunities we may have, or, consider internships. I know some of you may have had an internship canceled, and, that's obviously horrible, and it's been gut-wrenching for everyone, I think, to go through these things. But you can still look for creative opportunities to partner with us as an employer. It may be more of a mentorship that you can put down on your resume that we're doing that. We're doing virtual mentorship at some of our parent companies where you're not on site doing the typical intern thing, but you're getting that conversation from our executives and people in our organization. So that's out there if you ask and talk to people about it. And we're here to help. We're just like y'all are going through it, we're going through it. And I think we can all, as human beings, get together and get each other through this. And I want to help. And I know most people like me want to help in any way we can.
Yeah, and we're so glad that there's employers out there willing to do that. It means so much, kind of putting yourself in the student's shoes and knowing that things are different for them. But I think it's great that you mentioned, trying to think outside the box, because sometimes the opportunities that students thought they were going to have fell through, internships have fallen through, but that doesn't mean that all is lost. So I'm really glad that you mentioned some other kind of creative ways, think outside the box, still stay connected with that employer that you may have had a lost internship with, but you haven't lost that relationship. So I think that's great.
And internships can look different. I think so many people get in their head that it has to be a summer 8 to 12 week program at a formal structured internship. What about a micro internship while you're in school? Yes, you may have to work part-time and have a class load, but could you do it in the fall where you do the same thing for 3 months or 6 to 8 weeks? Where you're essentially working part-time while you're in school. That's another opportunity. It does not just have to be this chunk of time in the middle of the summer. It can look different than what it's always looked like.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, on the employer end too, they're realizing that when they're looking at a resume, because of the pandemic or COVID, however you want to refer to it, that things, may not have been as smooth as it could have been. So I know, on the employer side, you're taking that into consideration too.
Right.
But I think what looks really good is for a student that may have had a bump in the road because of it, but they overcame it. So they weren't just sitting back and saying, well, I lost this opportunity, so now there's just this blank, nothingness there, when they could have been doing some of the things you mentioned, or even just going back to the basics, working on their resume, getting their LinkedIn profile where it needs to be, because a lot of times time passes by and it's not updated. And you mentioned that you do use LinkedIn, as well as a lot of other recruiters that we have that recruit with us. And so you're still looking, you're still out there, you're still looking on LinkedIn. So they could be using that time too. So just to kind of wrap up our time, I do kind of want to mention elevator pitch, because, we may not be having face-to-face career fairs, but there's still going to be opportunity in a virtual career fair setting where you still have to introduce yourself, in some kind of way. And you do you talk to a lot of students at career fairs. So how do you feel a virtual way that they can kind of still use that elevator pitch? And if they don't have one, they need to definitely create one.
Yeah.
So kind of talk about that a little bit.
So, and to piggyback on that, I think right now you can do those things. You have an opportunity to practice, essentially, where you can FaceTime a friend and you guys can talk about that, and you can maybe mock interview one another or mock try out your elevator pitch. You can still do those things. That doesn't require you going anywhere or doing anything other than picking up your phone, connecting to FaceTime or whatever else, and going through that with someone and practice it. I think a lot of people interviewing, an elevator pitch, talking to people, it's a skill you learn over time. We've been learning it since we learned to speak, right? And communicate. And those things you have to practice. You're not going to be comfortable in an interview setting like this. I'm not comfortable like this.
It's different.
And that's why I acknowledge it front on that I'm not comfortable talking to you like this. And it's going to be weird for all of us, and we're all just going to smile and get through it. And it's okay. But the more you do that, and maybe you FaceTime a friend or mom or dad or your grandma or someone, I'll help you. I can do this. Obviously, I have FaceTime. I have video conferencing capability. Some of us are willing to do that and practice that elevator pitch so you don't feel weird doing it virtually. It becomes more second nature, because it is. We hammer so much of this is how you present yourself in person and right in front of that employer. Well, I'm not going to be there in the fall because I'm not catching germs. Okay, I'm over here sanitizing and staying in my own little bubble. And I want to meet you still, but I'm going to have to meet you like this. And so practice doing that so you don't feel awkward and uncomfortable. And do introduce yourself. Tell me, it's no different than if you were standing in front of me. What do you want to tell me about you to grab my attention right there? And pick those high points. And this is a really good opportunity to have some new high points. I know this has been a low for a lot of people, but it's an opportunity for us to take a hurdle and make it a hurdle, not a roadblock. And we can get over this. And you've got some good material and good potential to have some really good material for that pitch. And how you did understand that, oh, I wasn't aware until I partnered with my local food bank that you guys are actually a sponsor. And that's wonderful. And there you go. It's a lead off into your elevator pitch with people.
Exactly. I think that's great. Well, we really appreciate your time with us today. I think everything you had to say is very relevant and great information for the students. And we appreciate your willingness to help us out and work with Rawls students.
Well, thank you. And thank you again. And the students out there are watching, we're all going through it together, and we're going to get through it together. And trust me, if there's a group of people that can get us to the other side of this, I think it's you guys. And you guys will get us to the other side of this. And I'm just here to help you in whatever way I can and ride those coattails, because you guys, you do. It's been incredibly challenging for you guys as students. And trust me, most employers were humans as well. I say that all the time. I'm a human being. And
exactly.
I feel bad that your lives are just as disrupted as mine. And we would be remiss not acknowledging that you guys have dealt with a lot as well and have done a very good job adjusting. So keep doing it. we're going to get to the other side of this thing and it's going to be okay.
We will. We appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you.